There will come a time on the planet Earth when science and technology will be long forgotten, when humanity will rise from the ashes of nuclear holocaust, when wizards will rule the world. 20th Century Fox presents Wizards, a futuristic fantasy epic born in the mind of Ralph Bakshi, the master of animated magic. It is the story of two brothers, Avatar and Black Wolf, powerful wizards, and mortal enemies from the day they were born. Avatar, the good, who rules the peaceful kingdom of Montagar with wisdom.
Science and technology were outlawed millions of years ago.
And magic. Black Wolf, the future Führer.
Attention! Behold!
Who rediscovers the ancient secrets of propaganda, technology, and war. And sends out his mutant armies in a reign of unimaginable terror. In Wizards, you will also meet the lovely Princess Eleanor, the loyal elf Weehawk, and Peace, Black Wolf's evil robot henchman, who is transformed into an avenging instrument of justice. Wizards is a Tolkien world of fairies and elves, sorcerers, and demons. It is shot 10 million years from now, against strange and huge panoramic settings. And it is more fantastic, more enchanting, and more powerful than anything you've seen before. Wizards, the ultimate futuristic fantasy epic.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Well, Danny boy, them plates of alcohol and from plant to plant went down the mountainside. That summer's gone when all the roses are falling. Dead you must go, this you must go, but I must buy.
Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Danny B Movies. Here, I introduce a guest and or myself to a cult movie, and it is the finale of Wizard Month. I hope you've had a magical time, because most of the other ones I have yet to record, so we're doing some timey-wimey stuff going on. But I have a very special guest who's not been on for quite a while, and I know everyone has missed him as much as I have. And I've picked a very interesting film for us to look at, a children's film that features fairy prostitutes and Nazi propaganda. And who else could I talk about those things with except Angry Andy Reviews? Welcome back to the show, Andy. How are you?
I'm fine, except you're saying that you can only talk to someone like me about Nazi propaganda. What is this? Who are you painting me as? What is going on?
Everybody knows what you're like, a massive fascist. You are the black. Yeah. I'm the Avatar, and you're the Black Wolf of this relationship.
Oh God, yeah, may as well be. But yes, thank you for once again. Every time I come on here, it's another feast of delight of some kind of feature that you make me watch, and this is no different. I have no idea what was going on throughout. Horrified from the outset, completely baffled at the end. Terrific. Thank you.
Well, I knew you're a Lord of the Rings fan, and Ralph Bakshi of we're going to be talking about Wizards from 1977, which is a children's film. We'll get into it. We'll get into it.
I like you said Lord of the Rings fan, yet this is as far away from Lord of the Rings as you can get. This is Lord of the Rings if you had a meth-induced nightmare.
Yes, it is all of those things. But also, like, Andy, this particular month was chosen over our World War II month by the Patreon as
I
well.
know. So I'm glad you've managed to squeeze in some form of World War II content into this Wizards thing. So
There
you
you go.
deserve credit for that, because I was really gunning for the World War II genre.
I know you. But don't worry, we've got it all set up for next year. So
it gives the game away.
No. I've already said, but we've got it all set up. Might have changed it a little bit. Might have put in a comedy or something just to mix it up. But
a comedy,
I might have thrown in a comedy, maybe a satire.
What's funny about World War II?
Not much. But I thought it was getting a bit dour. So I was like, I think we need to.
World War II, Dan. Of course, it's dour. Millions of people died.
I know. I'm just saying. We'll save it. That's for next year. Don't worry. I've sorted it. Don't worry. I've planned it. I'm planning ahead. But I usually ask you to tell us the plot, but the introduction has already done that for you. Let's talk a little bit about Ralph Bakshi, who I would consider the anti-Disney. I've done a lot of kind of Disney podcasts this year with Natalie as well, a 4-hour podcast with Natalie.
Yeah.
Talking about Disney, and I've done some with Mike as well, and Rhea and everybody. And this is about as far away from Disney as a children's film gets. Ralph Bakshi is a really interesting, very outspoken, very political, very much about the people. He's supports creators. He doesn't like big business and, people with a lot of money. He's a satirist. He is, holding a mirror up to society. He believes that animation is not just for children, it's for adults, and it should be as dirty and depressing and heartfelt and as moving as real life actually is. And he'll often record dialogue from just every day outside on the street. And
I found that quite interesting about something. I think you linked me in with a video that was based on his work, and it was interesting that he'd recorded some people in a cafe, I think, for one particular scene, I think in Fritz the Cat or something like that. And it's just dialogue of people talking in a cafe, and then he's pasted that across this scene with these crows or something, I think it is, and it's really well done. It gives it like a really sort of a realistic feel, even though you're watching hardcore animation.
Yeah, and it's very authentic. Like even though it's they're anthropomorphic animals and stuff.
Yeah.
We still get a sense of like this is what real life is like, and a lot of his films are like that. He does high fantasy, and then he does like humorous stuff, and then he does kind of heartfelt stuff like American Pop. He's a really unique person. You might not agree with all his politics, which is fair enough. He is definitely an interesting figure, and he's got a raw talent. I think there's raw authenticity to his work. Is it as polished as some other animation? No. I don't think so. But you can never say it's boring with Ralph Bakshi.
No, there's always something going on screen, whether it's even in the sort of like the minutiae or like, really small moments. There's one particular moment in this film which really stands out, and it's when two soldiers are just sort of talking and one's pretending to be dead. And it's on the nose, as a lot of this film is, but it's really raw and gives you like a proper sense of like, almost like an authentic war kind of situation as well. Even though this is a high fantasy film, it's very grounded in what's a gritty, violent sort of arms race. It's really weird, this film. There's a lot going on. Like you said, there's always something going on, and nothing's ever really polished or set in stone all that much. It's kind of, you watch it and then you take away your own kind of thing from it. And for me, it became sort of like a psychedelic nightmare, very much sort of like, not necessarily, even though a lot of it's World War II, it almost sort of came across as like, a Vietnam kind of esque sort of, people being abused with propaganda and drugs and MK Ultra and all this kind of stuff. I got a lot of that coming through it, as well as this overlay of World War II and propaganda and persecution through that. There's multiple things going on this, and you can take something away from it, from your own sort of.
I believe even if you don't necessarily like the film, I think it's definitely worth seeing once, just to see this kind of vision on screen and to get a sense of what it's about. But I do believe he's saying a lot about, the subtext is about how dangerous propaganda is.
Oh yeah. Like I said, it's incredibly on the nose. Like within the first sort of within the opening sort of 5 minutes, you're well aware of what the intentions are of the film: propaganda, misuse of drugs,
technology,
technology, and how it's controlling our lives, and how it's going to endanger our lives and endanger the environment and things like that. It's all there. There's that much of it.
I think as well that he's trying to say that fascism never really goes away. Fascism is always there. Like he is of Israeli descent, so it's going to be one of those things that probably is quite close to his heart, and the use of the imagery and the swastikas in this. Bear in mind, this was marketed to children.
I can't believe that. I would never have put this down as a kids' film because it's not. There's a lot of violence in it. I know you get violence in Disney films or whatever, but there are elves and Nazi soldiers doing battle, undead Nazi soldiers, all doing battle at the end of the film. And when I say battle, I mean like in terms of like there's machine gun fire, there's swords and people getting cut in half and blown away and shot to pieces, and it's animation, but you see like young elves that look like kids being killed. So you get that whole like the innocence of youth has all gone and all that. There's loads going on in this film, but I can't believe this was ever marketed as a children's film because it doesn't play like one. It's got all the look of like a nicey, like sort of like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of like the animation Dungeons and Dragons.
The characters,
cartoon.
The characters are very cutesy looking, aren't they?
Yeah, they're all very cutesy looking, but they're all hyper violent, and it's that sort of cutesy look mixed in with this ultra violence, which is why I didn't think it was a kids film. I thought it was like, okay, this is an adult film played to look like a kids film, but no, you said it was completely marketed as a kids film.
Because this was a challenge to himself, because he's famous for doing Fritz the Cat, which is the first X-rated animated movie. And every time he did a film, there was some sort of controversy. Films are often taken away from him, re-edited, or they won't allow his vision to come out because they're worried about controversy. And his satire, did a blaxploitation film, which some people considered racist, but it is a pure satire, that film.
Yeah.
It's, he's taking that, that racism and spinning it and showing us a view of it from a different perspective. But this was his attempt. Again, it's not like it's as close to a kid's film as he could make, because he said, in comparison to something like Fritz the Cat, this is quite tame, but still there's over-sexualization, there's prostitutes, there's implied abortion, talk of abortion there's implied kind of rape, or there's a fairy who's forced to strip for these Nazi mutant soldiers, and sing a song. There's some really disturbing imagery, but it is powerful and it does work, and the imagery does stay with you. It doesn't leave you. And obviously this is all kind of belaboring his point. Like you've said, he's kind of going over the same points again, the allegories and everything. Yeah. And I find it entertaining and unique, but absolutely is not for kids. I would not recommend showing this to kids, even if it wasn't full of swastikas and Nazi propaganda. The violence in it is quite intense. Again, cutesy looking characters like Weehawk, who's like an elf. And, he calls Eleanor a slut later on as well.
Yeah, he does, yeah. I rewound that bit because I was like, you said that.
Yeah, he does.
Rewound it, I was like, Jesus Christ.
And there's a line from Avatar later on who says son of a bitch, and there's all sorts of kind of color. You son of a bitch. But we've talked about Bakshi and the ideas and the things that he was trying to say, the subtext of the film, but let's talk about
subtext though, is it?
No, but as you've heard in the introduction, this is a post-apocalyptic fantasy film as well, which is quite unique. Like humans are basically all dead. We've bombed each other, to smithereens, and then these fantasy creatures reclaim the earth. There's these mutants and kind of ugly kind of creatures, evil creatures that have come up out of the depths. But then also in Montagar, and Scorch is the evil place. Montagar's a good place. And then this fairy queen comes out. She gives birth to two wizards, and one is Black Wolf, who's this evil wizard with skeletal arms, this mutant wizard. And Avatar is this, handsome young hero. And I've talked about one of the artists in this film, Mike Ploog, before on my Man Thing podcast and my Werewolf by Night podcast.
Oh, yeah.
He does the artwork for the segments that are just kind of still images, which I really do like, even though obviously a lot of the choices for this were budgetary constraints, they were for budgetary reasons. But I like that he's come up with unique and interesting ways to get around those budgetary constraints. And that was one of the things I really appreciated, because I loved his artwork anyway in the comics, and he's done a lot of production design for he did work on The Thing and various other films as well.
Yeah.
And it comes to one's evil, one's good, very stereotypical fantasy film. They have a big fight for power after the mum dies, and then Black Wolf pisses off for 3,000 years. Discovers he can't win this fight because his mutants and denizens of hell that he pulls up, and I think there are some human-esque characters, but you never really see their face.
They're like human, like radioactive sort of like creatures, aren't they? The ones that have survived are still like kind of creatures, aren't they? I think there are also like small population of humans that have survived that aren't really involved, are they? I think you hear about them, but you don't really see much of them, I think.
No, there's the masked soldier characters, but then there's also I think it depends who was drawing that day, basically. What do you want to draw and how do you want to draw it? And it's basically just a big, just ugly trolls and lizards and mutants and freaky looking villains. And
it's all the stereotypes of an evil army, isn't it? An evil wizards army, like lizard people and mermen and
all sorts.
Yeah, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah. So we learn that Black Wolf he's been trying for 3,000 years to beat his brother and take over as the ruler of Earth, basically, or what's left of it, and take over Montagar. And he struggling because his army is very dim-witted and stupid and easily distracted, and they've not got the essence or that kind of motivation the drive to win and to fight. And that was the main reason he lost his fight against his brother. And he digs up all this previous technology, tanks and, Nazi propaganda, and he shows this to his army, and that kind of reinforces them. And then they go out and they win battles. This magic projector shows it to the elf army, all this Nazi, literal Nazi propaganda, real footage of Nazi propaganda with Hitler and everything. And that disturbs the elves as well, the elves.
Yeah, and it sends them into hysterics, doesn't it? It makes them sort of retreat from battle and not want to fight.
And they just get massacred, don't they? They just get massacred.
Absolutely annihilated.
And it is really, really brutal. And you have Necron 99, who goes out and is a robot who is sent to assassinate Avatar, who is in his group. There's the president, who is dressed like a clown and is Eleanor's father. Bizarre choice for a design, but he gets shot to death. And his some really heart-wrenching moments in this film as well, like when Eleanor's father is dead and she's clawing at Necron 99 and screaming like she's just lost her mind as she's lost her father. It's like, that's not a kid's film type thing with someone screaming in grief like that.
Yeah, we've dealt with trauma multiple times in Disney films. You never see it in sort of that raw sort of state of somebody going into manic sort of depression and unable to comprehend anything. You don't see any of that in Disney.
No,
so literally it's pure raw
emotion,
anger and misery, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just pours out of her. And before she's kind of a cutesy, cuddly, ditzy, very scantily clad, very sexualized kind of character.
Completely over-sexualized.
Yeah, nipples showing and everything, and it's a bit much. But I still kind of like her character because she's like, I'll fucking kill people, I'll avenge my father and stuff. I just think maybe if they toned down the sexualization of that character, it might have worked a bit better.
That's the thing, isn't it? With the characters, with sort of the animation style, the characters and the way they look is like an antithesis of how they actually are in the film, how they behave in the film. So you've got this over-sexualized, almost Betty Boop looking fairy who's actually a vengeful being. She wants to kill, she wants to revenge. her father, and you've got these elves that look, they look young. If you think of like Lord of the Rings, like they look a lot younger than that. They look like children, and yet they're on the front line of this war, getting massacred. And it sort of gives you that sort of like, okay, there were young people on the front line of World War II and all this, and it's sort of like that allegory. And I said it before we started, like the allegory is so on the nose. There's no way you can miss it. You can't miss anything in this film in terms of what it's trying to say, what it's trying to mean.
And maybe that was the point, though, because it was
exactly,
because it's marketed as a kids' film, and there's some very complex ideas for a kids' film.
Oh yeah,
to be getting across, and complex emotions to be sorted out, like Avatar goes into this. Spoilers, by the way, we're talking about a film from 1977. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. Go and watch it. He gets in once Eleanor betrays him. He feels heartbroken. He gets into like this kind of depression. He's confused. His mind is clouded. His magic isn't really working.
Yeah.
He's lost his impetus to fight as well, which is again it falls into that. And he's like, I don't think I can defeat my brother. And I love when films subvert my expectation. Some people don't particularly like that, but I like it when I'm genuinely surprised by something.
Yeah.
And the ending. The big wizard, because again, there's this term in like writing where you have the wizard's duel, don't you? I think it's a writing term anyway. It's the big finale, the wizard's duel, and we are expecting this big magical battle between the two of them, and they're going to like turn into different animals and conjure the weather and everything, and absolutely not, because.
Nothing happens.
Because it reminded me of like Equilibrium. Equilibrium's a great example of that, because you go in
that fabulous build-up, and then it's over in 2 seconds.
Exactly, and it's I love that film. I know you're a fan as well, but like, and that's what you kind of.
I've been waiting a long time for this, cleric.
But yeah, absolutely, and the same with this, because he goes. I'm glad you changed your name, you son of a bitch. Pulls out a Luger, Avatar, and shoots Black Wolf dead. Like that's it. And like that's like 5 minutes before the end. Like, right, we've got all this whole journey, this battle, everything they've gone through. They fought like. They've gone into like these. Weehawk had his little nightmare sequence. They got captured by fairies, there's assassins. There's Eleanor is taken over by Black Wolf. They've fought a tank. There's all sorts of crazy, and the fact that it just kind of goes, and it's weird because this whole thing is like anti-technology, and he goes, well, fuck it, I'll just fight fire with fire. And I'll shoot you dead with a German gun.
Yeah, it's Black Wolf has been sort of like reliant on this new technology, feels invincible by it, and yet he's completely undone by the technology he's been profiting from and wanting to use. He doesn't see it coming. He's blind. He's blinded by his own technology, which is a great sort of thing to look at in terms of our time. Even now, and that was in the late 70s. 25 years on, we're sort of like we're at this point where technology is blinding us as well. In terms of what we can see right in front of us, and he doesn't see the obvious in front of him. It's clearly the technology is going to be used against him, and yet he doesn't see it. It made me laugh when he pulled it out. I went, "Well, you son of a bitch!" I was like, "Jesus Christ!" Like, it's just because you don't expect it. You don't expect it because you are expecting this big wizard battle. Gandalf versus Saruman, or something like that. And you don't. You just get him pulling out this piddly little Luger, blowing him away completely, and then he goes, "All right, then," and swaddles off. It's a bizarre way to end it, but it makes sense in terms of like the context of the film, in terms of this like technology, the over reliance on technology, and how it will undo you. If you become enslaved to it.
Absolutely. Did you have any expectations coming in with this? Did you look into anything? Did you research it at all, or did you just kind of blindly watch it?
I blindly watched it because I hadn't heard anything of it before. I knew of Lord of the Rings. I remember watching the animated Lord of the Rings film a very long time ago. I haven't watched it since obviously the Peter Jackson ones came out, because they sort of override my thoughts on what Lord of the Rings should be now, for better or worse. And I knew of sort of like the art style and everything from that Lord of the Rings film, but with this film in particular, I knew nothing about it. I knew absolutely nothing about it. And when I started watching it, I was like, "Ooh, Jesus!" It kind of shocked me, like purely because like I've said already multiple times, just how immediately on the nose it all is. Like, this is it. This is what he wants. This is what he's discovered, and he's going to use this in this Nazi sort of propaganda to achieve his goals. So I was kind of glad that I didn't look into it before I actually turned it on, to be quite honest, because it kept hold of my focus, rather than sort of going, okay, I'm expecting this to happen now because I know what the film is about. I kind of was just utterly focused in on it purely because I was shocked by the opening.
Yeah, because again, like, it doesn't kind of follow those set standard kind of storytelling rules. It kind of goes off on its own thing, goes off on some odd tangents, which I think some of them don't necessarily work. I think some of them aren't the best.
Yeah. Some of the story beats, some of the directions it takes, like, and the screenplay. I don't think it's particularly well written.
No,
to be quite honest, when it does go off on these tangents, and you're like, well, where is this going? Why are you going here? Why are you doing this? It's
the whole bit where they fight the fairies didn't really need to happen.
No, and it's kind of bizarre, really, because the imagery and everything we see is so direct. It's so in your face. It's you will acknowledge what you're seeing. You will be absorbed by it, and yet the story itself trails off and goes off into stupid areas, and you kind of go, oh, I don't want to see this. Focus more in on what you've already sort of put me through me more of it. Don't trail off and go to some place that we
like for me,
don't want to see.
Like, I do enjoy the comedy in it. I think some of it works, like the bit where, like you were saying, where they killed Fritz. I can't believe no, I was just pretending to be asleep. And then he goes, oh, I can't believe you did that. What a dick. Shoots him accidentally, like, you yellow fairies, you killed Fritz.
Yeah.
Which is a reference to his film Fritz the Cat, because the writer, it's an underground comic, Fritz the Cat, and he loved it, got the rights to it, made the film, big success, and then they made a sequel with not with Ralph Bakshi, with somebody else, and the guy who created Fritz the comic killed him off. So that's kind of a reference to him, to them killing off that character. Can't believe we killed Fritz. But it is one of the more humorous takes. The bit in the kind of temple, the religious temple, where it's got like all this, I found that quite interesting because it's filled with kind of memorabilia from like the entertainment industry. Like there's the CBS Eye. And there's really various other stuff. Yeah, so it's almost like they're worshipping. It's almost like a Mad Max type situation where they're like worshipping the car and the chrome and the engine.
It's like media itself, and media itself is a fallen god. The craving for these idols to return. Yet they don't know how to harness these powers, and yet when the bad guy does find the ultimate in terms of media power, which is propaganda, that's what makes it haunting, because it's like, well, all these old previous sort of media conglomerations, they had good intentions, and now they've all fallen. They were responsible for the fall of man in terms of technology and war and everything like that, because media itself does have a big impact, doesn't it? And on war, we're seeing it right now with everything that's going on. Russia and Ukraine. We're getting all our news and all our information from Sky, from NBC, through Fox News, and we're all getting different angles and different opinions. So that's when they see all that kind of stuff in that sort of cathedral of fallen idols. It was kind of like, oh bloody hell, that's a powerful piece of imagery as well. Yeah, they're responsible for it.
Those are the new god. Those are currently our gods. Is like the social media or the TV or a lot of people literally will die for what some fucker like Piers Morgan will say on TV. They'll be like, "That's my opinion, and he's right, and I'll fight for that. I'll fight for my opinion," and it could be totally fucking wrong and could potentially lead to more heartache and pain.
There's that series that's I think it's finished now, but I can't remember what it's called, but. It was by Neil Gaiman, I think, and it was something to do with like the old gods fighting the new gods. Can't remember what it's called.
American Gods?
Yeah, that's it, American Gods, yeah. I mean, I watched the first two series and I think it went off the boil when half the cast left because of whatever reason. But that was the same kind of thing. It was like the old gods are failing, like Odin and, the Easter Bunny. I think she was one of them.
Sure.
But then it was the new gods were like media and social media and things like this, and they were all consolidating their power and how they were spinning it to influence the people, because it was a battle for influence. And I just found it quite interesting that in this sort of film we're seeing sort of the back end of that. Once all these once all this influence has failed from these massive media organizations, what comes next? Well, it's just the fall of man, isn't it? Because we're lost without information.
What do we do?
If news is the primary source of information, news, influencers, social media, if they all fail, what happens? Where do we go? Or we just dive into anarchy then, don't we?
And in a weird way, this film and its messages are relevant even now, 45 years later, is it? I think maybe
some of that. I got my timing wrong, and I said 25 years, but 77. I can't do my maths.
Yeah, I think I want to say
40 odd years, isn't it?
Yeah, 45, I think. Anyway, it does, those ideas are very clear, they're very succinct. Again, he does bash you over the head with it, but again, that's kind of the point. That's what he's doing. He does it in his other films. There's other films like Lord of the Rings, obviously, is a pretty straight adaptation for him.
Yeah,
he unfortunately didn't get to make the sequel because there was supposed to be 2 parts, and again, creative differences. It does seem to butt heads with studios quite a lot. And I think it's just he's an artist. He believes in authenticity and a rawness and a truth to his art. And I think when money and other stuff gets in the way, that can be a problem. Like even on this film, 1.2 million budget. He ran out of money. He said, I need another $50,000 to finish this. And they said, we're not giving it to you. You have to finish it. It was all the battle scenes. Yeah. And he was speaking. So George Lucas at 20th Century Fox was also making Star Wars at the time, and even asked Ralph to drop the original title was War Wizards, and George asked him to drop War from War Wizards so it wouldn't affect
have a detrimental impact on the
absolutely. So George had also gone over budget by like 2 million or something on Star Wars. So they sat down and they were talking like, they're not giving us any more money, what do we do? The studio said, take it out of your own money. So George went off and did that. He said, I'm going to take it. But he changed the back end of the deal. And I think he kept the merchandise rights and stuff like that, which obviously is history. But with Bakshi, he got paid $100,000. So he went, right, I'll cut half my fee, I'll give it to the animators, and we'll just do it. But he came up with a technique, he didn't come up with a technique, but he implemented this technique called rotoscoping, which involves the tracing over the animated cells over film footage. So there's lots of film footage in this for the battle scenes, because that's the one thing he hadn't animated, which was very key. And arguably some of the best bits in it are the battle sequences.
Yeah, it's probably the only part of the film, I think, where it's actually edited really well. The rest of the film, for me, it's a mixed bag in terms of the editing.
Sure.
It's all over the place. It's choppy. It doesn't make any sense. Yet for the battle scenes, it's because it is chaotic. It is, completely out there. It actually fits. The editing is done. And like you said, with this sort of like sketching over and tracing over, you get some weird sort of imagery, don't you?
Yeah.
With real life soldiers mixed in with hellscape looking.
Yeah, you've got like Nazi helmets on, but they add horns and glowing eyes and things like that. Yeah. And these shadow creatures from out of hell that have been drawn up by him as well. And it really does work. And I think, and he absolutely implemented this technique in all of his future films, American Pop, Fire and Ice. You name it. It's kind of been his thing to do that, and it does work. Unfortunately, the face, you can't really get detail on the face, unfortunately, that well.
No, they do just look more like shadow beings, don't they? Shadow creatures, especially sort of like the Nazi soldiers and all like the images of vehicles and like the sort of the background battles. They're all sort of like completely blurred out, aren't they? I wouldn't say blurred out, but they are made to look
smudged.
Like demons, smudged demons, like they've come from the depths of hell. And I think that's the way it's sort of played across, isn't it? Especially in the epilogue when it's describing what happens to them all. It's played out like, though, these are like demons and phantoms of what's come before, mixed in with his own armies that have
like the lizards and the mutants, and the
they've all sort of mixed
and
in together. And
it's a fascinating thing. And I think that, like I said, I think those are some of the best moments. And again, brutal. There's like brains coming out of people's heads, and gutting people, and slitting throats, machine gun fire filling people full of holes.
It is. It's pretty much like an animated sort of Saving Private Ryan, isn't it? Towards the end, so you got the end battle of Saving Private Ryan, which is a lot of people getting killed in horrific ways, And you got this very same sort of scenario at the back end of this film. It's literally complete war violence in animation form. There's people being gunned down left, right, and center. You know, there's elves fighting with swords. I think there's one bit where there's two evil soldiers on top of a pile of bodies of elves, and you just see more elves trying to climb up to kill them, and they're just gunning them down like. It's a good 10-15 second shot of just these two creatures just gunning down these elves that they're trying to climb up to, to slice at them. And nothing's held back because you can see them, like the bodies that they're all stood on. They're all like, their eyes are all gone, or there's limbs missing, and there's blood pouring out of their heads. Nothing's held back. Nothing's sort of left to the imagination.
That's one thing I've always liked about animation, is the fact that you can go a little bit further, even with a PG rating or a 12A or something. You can go that little bit more violent, or that little bit more, if it was real blood coming out of them, or if it's a real person. But with this, obviously, they're all kind of ghosts or demons or elves or wizards or fairies. So I think there is that license a little bit. Obviously, he goes way overboard for a kid's film.
A little bit.
But I think I've always appreciated that. I've always liked adult animation, and I think I always will, because I think there is something there. There is things to be said within adult animation. And if anything, Ralph Bakshi is the godfather of adult animation. We wouldn't have things like heavy metal, or, maybe some of the anime and things we get. And, some of those more mature kind of DC animated films as well. I don't think we would have that without his influence. Again, whether you like his work, whether you don't, his influence has been important in regards to this. And you have to remember as well, like back in that time, Hollywood was going through a big change. We've talked about it before with directors and, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, who he was good friends with, all these guys. He knew them very well, and they all believed in the same kind of ethos. I think Bakshi was a bit more outspoken about it, and politically, got himself in some trouble and controversy, like we've said. The world of cinema was changing. The world of animation was changing at the same time. It was a new, outlook and a new perspective, and people wanted real stories being told. Things like Mean Streets, like Scorsese's Mean Streets, or or The Godfather, or all the stuff that Spielberg's gone on to do with the fantasy sci-fi element. But he was part of that group of people and has maintained his friendship. He has fans like Quentin Tarantino, Spike Lee, Richard Pryor, Billie Eilish is a fan of Ralph Bakshi. Like it goes.
Oh God!
It transcends. Quentin Tarantino wrote the foreword for his book. He's that keen on the guy and his work, and it's been so influential. Matthew Modine,
like Tarantino likes everyone though, doesn't he?
Yeah, kind of.
You're a bit controversial. Tarantino's going to write the foreword in your book. All right. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, dude. But yeah, like who else is he? Who else? Oh, Gore Verbinski of Rango fame. He was like, when I was animating Rango, I thought about Ralph Bakshi's work. So
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, so it's a huge influence he's had. Again, regardless.
You know what? I reckon Disney had a sort of like a bit of like, when they came through the Black Cauldron, which Natalie finished watching earlier today. We tried watching it, and we turned it off halfway through because we couldn't handle it because it's crap. But I wonder if Disney sort of looked when they came to do like the Black Cauldron, whether they went, oh, we need to go a bit darker, don't we? Oh, maybe, should we get Ralph Bakshi? Oh no, we'll just try and rip it off, and we'll go a bit dark.
Yeah, I don't think he would. I honestly don't think he would have worked for Disney anyway.
No, Willie Birds, but I think Disney probably went, oh well, our animations kind of get floundering a little bit in it. Black Cauldron. Oh well, Wizards did really well, didn't it? Let's try and rip that off a little bit.
So
it's almost like a back and forth, isn't there? Yeah.
So Ralph Bakshi is the first animator to have two financially successful animated films back to back. The only other person before that was Walt Disney. 9 million it made on a budget of 1.2. And that's Wizards came out the week before Star Wars did. So there's so many films that failed when Star Wars was released, like Sorcerer, William Friedkin's Sorcerer, and various other films like just got absolutely destroyed by Star Wars. But the fact that Ralph Bakshi's small animated studio, came in mostly on budget, but still made a huge profit. That's why he got given Lord of the Rings. That's why he kept having work, because his techniques allowed him to keep in budget or slightly under budget, depending on the work. But the rotoscoping, the other stuff, the live action he would film and then rotoscope. He did that for Lord of the Rings with the battle scenes. That is kind of incredible in a way.
Yeah.
I find it absolutely fascinating that he's had such success and such an interesting career, just off the back of stuff like that.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
But was there any moments where you were like, this is just kind of just crap? This is crap.
Oh, there were numerous moments, to be quite honest. I did zone out a good few times. Pure, like when we said some of the side stories, which were just utter shit. A lot of the characters didn't really work for me either. I didn't really buy the hero elf. I can't remember his bloody name. That's how little he sort of mattered to me. Weehawk, that's him. I was like, I don't care what you're trying to say. I don't get you. I don't believe you. You're shit, Legolas. I'm not interested. But yeah, it's hard to sort of remember which bits I didn't really like because I completely zoned out. And that's the thing with this film, because like I said, everything, all the imagery is so direct, so to the point, so focused on making you acknowledge what it's trying to say, and yet the story is fucking garbage. It's literally a garbage story for me. We were saying at the start, it's 3 million years in the future, and then another 3,000 years, and then another 100 years. I'm like, how many time jumps are we doing in this prologue? What is going on? I was like, just set it and leave it as it is. So immediately for me, I was kind of like, oh, I'm lost already because you've done 3 time jumps. I ain't got a clue what's going on. And yet during the film, the sort of going back in time because of all the imagery, all the use of technology, all the weapons and everything is kind of going back in time.
Yeah.
I'm lost already.
So it jumps. We see the extinction of Earth. This is really interesting because it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy film, because usually fantasy films aren't even set on Earth a lot of the time. It's usually like Middle Earth, or it's a mystical land. It's Narnia. It's something like that. It's
an untold realm of delightful possibilities.
Oh, Mr. Tumnus. There's all that sort of bullshit that comes with fantasy films. And I think fantasy films and sword and sorcery films are quite tricky as well. There's very few that are nailed it, absolutely brilliant fantasy film. I think we get the modern kind of urban fantasy films that seem to be a bit more popular, like a Never-Ending Story, or I don't know, Indian in the Cupboard. I'm pulling weird references out my arse.
That's a fucking bizarre one.
I know. I don't know why that came
pull
to
that from. Fucking hell. I would never have come up with that in a million years, would they? And then you get a lot of fantasy films which just have, it's just bollocks in a glass, isn't it? And you're looking at it going, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
And yet it's got moments of grand design, and the rest of it's just arse. It's kind of what this was for me. There are moments of excellence in it for me, especially at the battle scenes and the way that it does portray the propaganda. Because all I was thinking about was literally propaganda in war, and how it does influence the masses on both sides, and what it can do, to propel an army or to demoralize an army completely. And yet I was like, oh, now we're going to some shitty village that I don't really care about to do battle with these. Why? Who? What's my name? I've lost track of what I'm doing. That's all I could think of. I was like, right, okay, I've completely lost the point. How much of this film have I missed? 10 seconds. Right. Okay. What the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, again, we talk about the fairy kind of segment is it's almost like a side mission, isn't it? It's almost like, oh, we're just going to get this.
It's a side mission you get in the middle of Skyrim, and you're like, oh, do I have to? It's on the way to the main quest, so you go, oh, fuck it, I'll go and do it anyway. I might get a sword out of it.
Speaking of George Lucas, this is actually Mark Hamill's first acting credit on IMDb, because he was filming Star Wars and he took a bit of time off. And George was like, well, I've got this guy who is an actor. Do you have any roles for him? So he plays Sean, the Fairy King, who gets promptly assassinated after he introduces himself. He's like, assassins! And gets shot directly in the chest very violently. And it's, again, with that, there's a bit of a disconnect for me because he gets assassinated. It's implied that it's Peace or Necron 99, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
and who is a very small part of this film, even though he's plastered over like every poster on his horse.
Yeah.
Like he's quite, because I actually, coming back to what I'd seen it before, but coming back to watch it, I was like, oh, I remember him being quite prevalent, and it kind of the story opens with him going to assassinate Avatar, and I thought he was in it all the way up to the end, but he really wasn't. And
no, it kind of just fades away, doesn't it?
Yeah, kind of. He gets murdered by Eleanor when she's taken over by Black Wolf, and yeah, it's kind of just that. But it's implied that because Weehawk's like, I don't trust you, you're evil, I don't trust you, because Avatar has reprogrammed him. And there's a really kind of quick, like you were talking about the editing, and there's this bit where all of a sudden we see Eleanor screaming. I'm like, where the fuck did she go? What's just happened? And then she's captured. She's between these two stone columns and being interrogated by the fairies. And it absolutely threw me for a loop. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like, I didn't.
That's the big bone of contention for me. It was that point. I literally had no idea what was going on. I literally didn't know what was going on because everything happened so quickly. When I was saying like within 5 seconds everything had changed, well, that was it. That was that moment. I was kind of like, has a bit of the movie been cut? Have I missed something entirely?
Because you don't see the assassins, you don't see Peter do it either, and it's kind of like, oh, is it him? Is it going to go ahead? Is this what is happening? Weehawk's fallen into a cave and is fighting this nightmare creature thing, or this invisible creature and stuff. So it's very, very confusing for me. And
it is. Yeah, it's really, really, really bizarre. I don't get I don't know whether something was cut out or something was missing. I'm not sure, because it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. What you're like, oh, okay, this has all happened. Why?
That was my least favorite probably part of the film, and I don't feel like they have much of a threat towards the group either. I think they could just, if they wanted to, just step on them and
batter them all.
And then Black Wolf turns up and is like, ooh, and just disappears. He's like, don't listen to Avatar. He's not good. And then Peace turns back up and it's like he's been injured, so he must have killed the other assassins. But yeah, it's not very, like we said, it's not very coherent, but
it's completely all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's completely all over the place, that bit.
It's a mess. Like even the other sequences, like where they go to that temple and other stuff, or where we go to the bar in Scorch and things, and they have the sword thrown at this guy and stuff. Even that is kind of a little bit smoother. But yeah, there's just one section. It's just, I think that also annoyed me because again, it's just all like, oh, we're these wee little fairies, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like this. And again. And they don't really.
This is absolute shite.
And they don't really clarify the difference between like Eleanor. She says she's not, a true fairy. She's going to be like a father seems human. She's saying like her wings are not fully formed or they're transparent. Or something.
There's a lot that comes up in such a short space of time where you're like, okay, it's like backstory and all sorts that just pops up and you're like, what? Okay, can you clarify any of this? No, we're moving on. All right. Oh, okay.
I think that's it. I think sometimes with the fantasy films is this they come up with all this lore. They either come up with too much lore or they don't come up with enough to fill in the gaps, sort of thing. Or again, like we usually get a big exposition dump. Like every Thor movie was like, long ago, the gloobity glue in the darkness of space did this, and the Big Bang, and
But then some films where you're like desperate for exposition, like I don't know, say like the fucking Rise of Skywalker. Like, how did any of this fucking out? Yeah. How did he get here? How would the fucking how the Empire got all these thousands of ships? No, fuck it. Buy a comic later on down the line in 12 months' time.
Play Fortnite. That'll tell you.
Yeah, fuck off. Oh God.
Somehow Palpatine has returned.
Yeah, can you tell me, please? I'd really like to know. It's in a comic in 12 months. All right, okay, nice one. Yeah, some films where you're desperate for a bit of exposition because sometimes you do need it. I always go on about exposition and how much I hate it. If it's done properly within, a decent way, whether it's a character explaining, his own personal motivations or something along the lines, or something's discovered and unraveled or contemplated upon, then fine. But you can't just plow through entire scenes like this and go, well, her wings are not properly formed because she's part fairy and this is that and that. And you're like, where the fuck did this come from? Oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it fucking does, because you're giving me some kind of impetus of what a character motivations might be. Why she is more aggressive why she is being persecuted by all these other furries, or any of the other characters, why they don't trust her. This is important. It's important, just like it's important to know how Palpatine survived. Oh, it doesn't matter. It just somehow brilliant writing.
Somehow. We've got to. That's what I hated about Rise of Skywalker. I quite like The Last Jedi, but Rise of Skywalker was 20 minutes of retconning, which it drove me fucking mad. It's just like, I don't have a problem with retconning, but if you've had such a bad reaction to the previous film, I don't think you need to fix it. I would just roll with those punches. You've made that decision. You've agreed to it. The director has released the film. It's had, I said this on the BVS podcast we did. I don't know if you did. I don't know if going and fixing problems that the audience has with a film is a good thing. I think just carry on. You've told that story. Everyone has signed off on this story. Everyone has said yes, this is fine. So move on with it. Go with it. Don't just go, no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That was a lie. Bullshit. Utter bullshit for me. But anyway, not getting onto Star Wars again. We talked enough Star Wars in this podcast alone, I think.
No, we haven't.
There's always more Star Wars to talk about. But
so anyway, the Rise of Skywalker.
Anyway, back to that. War wizards. Rise
of the War Wizards of Skywalker.
The War Wizards. Did you? Speaking of Eleanor, let's talk about her a little bit. I think again we've talked about that she's overly sexualized, but there's some really I think this film has some really heartfelt moments in it. I think the horror of war and homelessness and taking prisoners and. There's that little woman in there going, we all we have is love, and they have weapons of war and things like that. And there's, and when Eleanor and Avatar are trapped in the snow and they're going to freeze to death as well, I was like, fucking hell, this is like quite, it really, like your heart absolutely sinks for the characters. And I think those sadder moments hit harder than some of the stupider comedy elements. I did chuckle at some of it. I was like, oh yeah, it's this silly old wizard. It reminded me a little bit of like Sword in the Stone. Like Merlin's always fucking up.
The bumbling wizard archetype that's actually the most powerful being in the entire fucking world.
Yeah, and they're all like, your Avatar? I don't believe your Avatar. Shut up. This stupid little, and again, like earlier on, you get this look of the character who's like when he's young and heroic, and I like that he's this. The actor's doing a Peter Falk impressions. That's why he sounds like Columbo. And Ralph Bakshi is like, I love Columbo. I love Peter Falk. Let's do more of that. So yeah, and I quite like that he's like smoking cigars and he's got the wisecracks and he's like this, I love that he's not your typical fantasy character Avatar. I like that.
No, yeah.
Eleanor, I think, again, I think there is a character dying to get out, but there's some really creepy moments between her and Avatar. Like there's this love story between them, and I'm like,
that's a load of shit.
Yeah, it's a bit problematic having a teacher be the love interest, and the bit where he's like, "Oh, I'm going to go to bed," and she turns around, and she's like, "I need to avenge my father. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to cut their throats." She's got the sword and everything, and then all of a sudden he was like, "What are we going to do, Avatar? Where are we going to go? How are we going to solve it?" He's like, "I'm too old for this shit. I'm done. I'm busted. I'm no good.
I'm 3 days to retirement."
Pretty much, I'm too old for this shit. I mean, even the end is kind of a bit Lethal Weapon 2, isn't it? It's like it's just been revoked. That's very much that. And but there's this bit where he's like, "I'll just stand there," and then she's like in this very sexualized pose, and I'm like, why would she be posing sexualized and just be like, okay, sure? When she's like, "No, I got to kill the guy who killed my father."
Yeah.
Like, when she was like the scene before, she's screaming and scratching at Necron 99 or Peace, whatever you want to call him. And, she's screaming in agony and in grief. Why would she just be like, "Oh, I'm going to be sexy on the end of this bed"?
Yeah, it goes against sort of like the anti sort of character that was initially created. So like, because she does look a certain way, and yet she behaves in a completely different way, wanting revenge, wanting, to kill everything. Like I said, and then she just stood there like, "Oh, well, maybe we should,
Big, hard nipples. massively hard nipples
Just
popping out.
fucking stick to the character as you've already created. That she wants to murder people. It's not about how she looks. It's about how she acts.
Yeah. What's her character? What's her motivations? You know, but it didn't seem true to the character they were trying to get.
No.
It's like cheesecake or it's fan service. Like, oh, well, you want to see a fairy with big tits, don't you? So here it is, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's not really probably what kids want to see in their kids' film.
No, they
all the swastikas.
They want to see fluffy Bambi and things like that. You know, don't want to see this.
They don't want to see fairy prostitutes with saggy breasts. They don't want to see those.
Like elves getting gunned down by MP40s.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, they got the big chain guns, haven't they? Like,
fucking Jesus Christ!
It is
Panzer tanks coming in,
rolling over the dead. You know, taking them hostage and stuff. And you know, I agree with you about Weehawk as well. I think he's just your standard. There's no depth to Weehawk.
No,
just like
it's just an archetype, isn't he? He's just a bog standard archetype, heroic warrior character. There's nothing to him. He's got the muscles, he's got the brawn, he's got the long flowing locks, and he swings a sword around, and it's very basic, unfortunately.
Shit Aragorn.
Oh well, all these characters are like proto sort of characters for what was obviously in Lord of the Rings, aren't they? So they're very sort of like kind of rip-offs, but not. It's So everything in this film, it's on the fucking nose. I'll repeat it again. It's on the nose. You've seen it before, and yet it's fucking horrifying.
Well, speaking of horrifying as well, let's talk about Black Wolf trying to have a child with this other elf character, this other elf princess. He's in his radioactive, land of Scorch that he lives in, has been forced to live in with all his mutants and dark denizens and devils, and apparently that little lizard creature is based on Gollum as well. Apparently,
I'm not surprised. To be fair, yeah,
you can see that, and he goes over to these kind of hooded figures, and he's like, who are basically doctors, I guess, who have inspected her. Will my child be normal, or will it be a mutant? And they go, probably a mutant, I think. And it's like, right, well, the next one won't be. So and then she screams, "Don't kill it! Don't kill it! It's not its fault."
Oh God!
yeah. So
it's really dark. This film, isn't it?
It really is.
Absurdly dark. It's so dark. I mean, the thing that freaks me out about him is that he looks a bit like Rasputin. It's like an undead Rasputin, isn't it? And just that imagery alone is terrifying. And you've got these moments, ultra dark moments. Like you don't see anything, but the implication is there. And the implication is enough because it's happened, and it's awful. It's really awful. Hammering home, this is a kid's bloody movie. It's awful.
She does turn up in the end. She does have the baby in arms, so we don't see the baby, so we don't know if it's a mutant or not. But that's beside the point anyway, because you raise the kid well, that's good. But she kind of distracts Weehawk after he runs in, punches Eleanor, calls her a slut. Again, more problematic stuff. This whole film is probably problematic for most people, and
I mean, you won't see this being played at 10:15 at your local Odeon.
Yeah, it won't be on ITV. It won't be on ITV2 or anything.
No, at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Now a lovely kids movie, Wizards.
They'll be like, we can't. This would be impossible to even edit all that shit out. It'd be impossible. It would be
if they did edit it, you'd have like a 20-minute special. And all it'd be is like the fluffiest moments of the film, which just look even dark and depressing as it is, and then
I think so.
Madness.
I think so. It's a totally unique film, and again, I quite like it. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I love the energy, the imagination behind it, the vibrancy, the authenticity, the message. There's a lot you can take away. It's classic animation. It's a unique story, and he's told it in his own way, and I appreciate that. There's very, very rare where you see a film nowadays and go, that was really authentic. That was something different. That was unique. Yeah. How many films do you watch on your channel and be like, this is just, copy and paste bullshit?
Yeah. Everything's just a fucking copy and paste these days.
You know, it's reboots or sequels. It's the same thing. It's the same stories and the same beats, same type of characters. You've got to give it to him. It is different, and it's raw, and it's never boring. It's never boring. It is.
No, even though you probably will get lost in a few moments and be like, where the fuck is this? What am I watching? I wouldn't say I was ever sort of bored by anything of it. I think it was just kind of like if you miss a beat, you get left behind a little bit. I think that's the problem, and you can miss a beat for any number of reasons. Whether you just don't kind of understand what's going on, or you miss a point. That's the thing with this film. It is a really, really good film. You know, in terms of ideas, in terms of what it's trying to say in the message. I wouldn't say it's a very good film in terms of story.
No,
and in terms of a selling point, the message, you know, the style, the sheer goal to create it, I think is well worth sort of like anybody watching it.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Andy, to a degree.
Yeah, to a degree, I did. Yeah, like I said, I don't. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think that I'll ever go back to this film. I do think it's definitely something you have to see at least once because it's so unique, and there'll never be another film like it. Even by Bakshi's standards, he's never made another film like with. No, but they have toyed. He's toyed with the idea of doing a sequel for bloody years, though, hasn't he?
It didn't sound very good, though. The premise is that, like, obviously, Eleanor and Avatar get together and they go off to create their own land and family and stuff. And Weehawk is in charge of the Fairy Kingdom now. He takes over. Yeah. And the implication is that Weehawk would come between them and there'll be this love triangle. I was like, that sounds utter dog shit. Sorry. Yeah, but sounds...
I don't think it would, because the fact of this film is like what is interesting about it is the shock value. Yeah, we're talking it's mid to late 70s, and we're talking about films that, you know, when they were shown, they did shock people. And it's not just this film, it's, you know, horror movies, you know, then, you know, even late night movies, you know, that were shown that have now become mainstream and things like that. You know, this is of that sort of genre. This is of that sort of style, the shock value, like getting people to sort of sit there and go, fucking hell, what did I just watch? I don't think you can replicate it. I don't think there's any way that you could replicate it in terms of creating a sequel. I think a sequel would probably sort of like diminish sort of horrifying impact of this. You know, the shock value would diminish it. Sort of like, you know, sequels to Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th or things like that. The further you go with sequels, the less impactful the originals are. I think that's the problem. I don't. If the sequel was to come of this, is there any way you can replicate the shock value of seeing, you know, Nazi imagery on screen that's influencing elves and demoralizing them? I don't think so.
And again, I love a good post-apocalyptic movie as well. And this, you know, technically fits in that genre. Even though
it's several genres intermingled, isn't it?
Matched together. And again, really interesting, really creative. Like if you're looking for like an artist's kind of canvas, like this is a work of art. Again, it's rough. It's not, you know, completely cohesive, but it's fascinating to watch. It's interesting to see those ideas play, to see the character, just those little sequences, like you're saying, with they're piled up with the elf bodies and they're shooting away. You know, there's the little sequence when they're in the trenches and the old guy's like, oh, listen to me, kid. And he's got that pipe with two big tits on, you know, and he's smoking away. He's like, oh, listen to me, kid, they're rubbish. They'll never win. And then they come in and again, they show the Nazi propaganda with their magic projector. And we see the evil that is fascism. And again, it's, you know, fascism is only, you know, it's a hair's breadth away from coming back at any one point. I don't care what you say. I saw a poster the other day and it was like, why has fascism come back? And it was like an advert for some political rally or something. I was like, fascism never went away. It's still here.
No.
There's always somebody, you know, vying for that, or it's, you know, it's going to happen. Even if it's not in this country, it's in quite a few other countries.
All it takes, as is evidenced in this film, is a suggestible population. That's all it takes. It's just people that are able to be suggestible to ideas, which is what happens in this. You've got sub creatures and lesser creatures. You know, lesser elements of society. You know, I'm not saying that any human being is lesser to another, but you have these elements in society which are, you know, they perceive themselves to be sort of forgotten about. You know, the forgotten generations, forgotten youth, and all this. They're looking for something to rally them, to inspire them. And like you said, you get Piers Morgan, you get Joe Rogan, you get Marine Le Pen, you get all these that are inspiring, these particular groups of individuals, because they feel like they don't have a voice. And yet these people that might well be swinging to the right wing or even the far left, they're influencing them. They're giving them a voice that they never feel like they had before, for good or for ill, whether it is the far left or the far right. And that's the thing. That's the thing. I think we've had, for a very long time, very centralized opinions. And, similar to in this film, it's all centralized until somebody finds that spark. And that spark is this buried message that's been hidden for a very long time. And when that happens in the real world, which you've seen before with Donald Trump, you've seen he hits the nail on the head with certain types of messaging. And once people react to that in a positive way, then it builds and it builds and it builds and it keeps building until you get the desired result. That's what this film. That's what this film shows. Yeah, okay, the creatures from underneath the earth, but they get inspired, and then the more they hear, the more they see, the more they do. Oh well, this is the right way. This is how we're going to win the war. And then you see the elves, who are the beacons of light and innocence and whatever. They're struggling because they can't deal with this negative imagery. They can't deal with it. And this is how it is in society. It's like our society at the minute. Everything's powered by social media. You see a negative image, you're going to react one way or the other. That's the way it is, and it's terrifying. This film sort of it does suggest this post-apocalyptic world is coming. Well, funnily enough, it's not that far off, is it really, in terms of the message polluting ideas and inspiring and technology being the bearer of bad news and creating untold misery.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with any more with all that stuff you were saying. But I saw recently, I think on the news today, people were doing a computer. Didn't Russia send out we could nuke you in 5 seconds flat and you'd be dead? There was some sort of computer, I don't know, program or plan or something that they were this is what would happen if this is what we can do, and this is the effect it would have.
Yeah, it was like an advertising threat, wasn't it? It was here's a public service message from the Russian Federation.
And that's propaganda. Make America great again. That's propaganda. I couldn't think of a more obvious bit of propaganda. Like you were saying with Trump and everything.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's good propaganda and there's negative propaganda. Yeah. It's how you react to it. Because the Apple adverts on TV is propaganda.
Oh yeah,
it's telling you need to buy a new phone when there's nothing wrong with your fucking phone. That kind of stuff. The next Big Mac's out, well, that's propaganda because it's telling you need to buy it. Do you really? No, not really. Do you need to buy into this political opinion? No. But if you're feeling shit and you don't feel like you've got anybody listening to you, and then somebody on TV goes, oh well, here's my opinion. You go, I agree with that opinion. We do it with movie critics.
Sure.
We do it with opinions on, people that have opinions on video games and comics. All this comics crap. And somebody else goes, actually, I think it's really great. And you might latch onto either one of those opinions. I do it. I don't expect everyone to, agree with my opinion, but some people have latched onto my opinions and gone, yeah, you're absolutely right. And some people have gone, no, you're a fucking arsehole and you're talking absolute shit and send me private messages and then deleted their accounts.
Andy, that's just Andy, that's just me. I just send them.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. It's tickled me. I had numerous private messages and you click on their account and it's been deleted. You're like, all right.
Yeah. But really? Again, that if we're talking about subhumans, they're the subhumans.
Exactly.
Those hateful people full of hate, rage, and all that horrible, vile, vitriolic bullshit that people are full of. And again, people can get radicalized quite easily. It happens on a daily basis. And again, this film is saying that as well. All it takes is one little image or one little thing to send you on this course.
The key phrases that you want to hear, and you will take up arms.
There you go. Well, I think we've come to an end because I think we've not really talked about the magic, the wizards, the fantasy.
I think that's all inconsequential, isn't it? I think True. It's called Wizards, and it is a high fantasy film, but that's kind of sort of like the paint on the canvas, isn't it? It's not what's been drawn. I think the coloring, sort of like the wizardry and everything, that is sort of like an extension of what the film actually is. That's sort of my takeaway from it. I don't believe that it is like a sort of like a wizard's kind of film, or like a like Harry Potter kind of thing. It's much more than that. It's much more deeper than that. It's much more based in reality, in the guise of this childlike civil, this childlike environment, this childlike story. It's much more than that. It's much deeper than that.
And
the wizards are just the painting.
Yeah, and I think that using wizards to get that message across, using the high fantasy to get that message across is inspired. And again, people talk about people forcing politics on them and and all this problems and stuff. Like all art's political one way or another.
Oh,
and you can't help it. It's just is.
This picture of a deer behind me is completely political. It's got branches growing off its antlers. I'm in the living room. My studio is in development. This political statement of the deer is all to do with the environment, because it's an innocent animal with branches growing on it, and we're destroying the environment. So yeah, you're right. Everything's political.
There you go. Like, again, if you
bought it from IKEA,
IKEA known for being very political, but you're right, absolutely right. And I think you've absolutely got what Ralph Bakshi is about. Like that's his creed, that's his ethos. Again, he wants creative freedom, and he's never really had it to a degree. Like he has had some creative freedom, but then obviously that's met with controversy and stuff. But a lot of his films have been taken away from him, like Cool World he did, and a few others have been literally just pulled away, or he's not been allowed to edit them, or he's not been allowed to do stuff with it, like mixing live action with animation. He produced and he used to work for Terry Toons, who did Mighty Mouse back in the day. And he also animated the 60s Spider-Man cartoon, which is probably why it was so fucking weird. It is fucking weird. Those later episodes,
it all makes sense.
They're fucking mental. Anyway, but he's put it together. He put a new series together in the late 80s, and he got all the kind of powerhouses of animation, basically gave them their start, give them free creative control on that show, so they could do whatever they want, whatever idea, whatever they wanted to come up with. He just said, just run with it. And he paid them well. They had good practice, they had good times. And like Bruce Timm, obviously not many years after that, went to do Tiny Toons, and then he went to do Batman the Animated Series, and on and on and on. And there's other names in animation. I'll see if I can find them on here. I've got them somewhere. Here we go. So we've got Bruce Timm, Andrew Stanton, Dave Marshall, and Jeff Pigeon. So if you know your animation, those guys' names will crop up a lot. Even in stuff like Pixar and various other things, like they've gone on to bigger and greater things. And he paid them well. He gave them creative control, and he's all about the little guy. Ralph Bakshi's always been about the little guy and defending and he doesn't like the fat cats and the the crypto fascists and all this sort of stuff. Like he's.
Do you mean to say that everything's coming full circle again, Dan? And we're going back to that period in the 60s and 70s where artists were completely underpaid in favor of more easily accessible media.
Possibly sanitized.
Like buying Twitter for 44 million.
But again,
44 billion that is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and free speech is potentially under lock and key, potentially on things like that.
Free speech is now owned. It's going to be copyrighted. Well,
my Facebook got unpublished and now republished, so it's back.
Yeah. And then was it
Dan Burgess, who's been a guest on the podcast. His has just been unpublished, so I don't know what.
And his is a photography thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. And I sent loads of appeals out to kind of say what's going on. I'm not sure what's happening. And I think it's one of two things. Either I've been sharing too much on the Facebook groups. It was the wrong type of page. The location was wrong or something. I don't know. Whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Fucking algorithms. That's what it is.
Yeah,
the algorithm will get you.
Fucking algorithm. Anyway. I think we have come to an end. I think we have talked long and hard about the politics of wizards. And again, I've cherry picked all the subjects this month. Could try to be a lot of varied stuff. So, and I think this is probably arguably the most political film of the bunch. And but I've had a lot of fun with it, and I think you've had a lot of fun with it too.
I have.
It's been an experience. But I thought we'd have a look at maybe a little, slightly, what I look at, the kind of stuff I bring up and bring to the fore for you.
Shit, crazy stuff. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Fucking mental stuff. Anyway, Andy, you're on the social medias. You have a YouTube channel. Tell people where that is, where they can find you.
Well, quite simply, you can find me on YouTube at Angry Andy Reviews. Just type that in, you'll find me. I do a lot of reviews on movies. I'm going to be doing a review on Picard Series 2 as soon as the final episode has come out. You should have already seen that by the time this podcast is out, but there's a couple of other things doing, like The Northman, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, yeah, can't wait for that one.
Yeah, I've had a bit of a break recently with the arrival of my replicant, my offspring.
Understandable.
So yeah, I've been taking a little bit of a break. You got some stuff while I'm building a new studio as well. But yeah, so you can find me on there. There's all sorts of crazy stuff, and I'll be uploading as and when I can. But I'm also on Twitter at Andy_review. So find me on there as well.
Find you on there. Fantastic. Well, there's a huge back catalogue of Andy's stuff. I'm on there as well on the odd occasion as well.
The Matrix, the Matrix Resurrections.
Don't remind me. Don't remind me. Fucking hell. That was angry. That was Angry Dan reviews. That's what that one was.
It was.
Jesus.
That's why I wanted you to do it, because I knew you were fucking raging. I was
mad. I only got more angry the more I thought about it on the drive home. Anyway, you can find me on Facebook. You can definitely find me on Facebook. It's at Secret Bores. Twitter is at Dan_Bores. Instagram.
Are you okay?
I'm having a stroke. That's what I'm doing.
I'm not surprised.
Too much coffee, I think, today. Instagram, it's at SpiderDanSecretBalls. Review, like, share, comment, subscribe, etc. And don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. If you want to join the Prattalion and to be briefed in full on the Secret Bores, swing over to Prattle World at SpiderDanandTheSecretBalls.com. And I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I'm Jack's Musings, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Scott Hodgson, Simon Cotton, Mike Burton, and Angry Andy Reviews.
And you should join. You should join as well.
Come along.
Join Prattle World. Come on down, son of a bitch.
Be part of the Prattalion. It's been fantastic. Thank you, Andy. I hope you guys have enjoyed Wizard Month that the Prattalion did vote for over Andy's World War II month. But now you're part of the...
Don't worry, I'll have my revenge. Well, I'll stroll in with my tanks and my Air Force and carpet bomb your opinions.
To be fair, we have talked a lot about World War II today on this one. So
I did get my revenge. So Revenge of the Angry Andy. Yes. Greatest film you've ever seen.
Anyway, thank you, Andy, again. It's been great. It's been far too long. And we will do something again very, very soon.
Oh, we will.
Bye-bye.
Bye.